At this time of the evening, I usually tell a few stories, with your permission. This is something that we started some years ago. People seem to enjoy it. My son says, "Dad, now it's a tradition, you have to do it." So with your permission, let me talk tonight about the influence of Arab culture in the United States. A few weeks ago, I was talking with our new Arab League ambassador, Abdul Khalid bin Rafa, Mr. Ambassador, about the influence of the Arab world in the United States. And some of you might be surprised to learn the extent of that influence. So consider this, for example, that in the top 10 list of languages that have contributed to the English language, Arabic is number 6. There are somewhere between 2,338 words and 6,500 words that have come from Arabic in the English language, either directly or indirectly, typically through Spanish. Everything from Alcatraz, algebra, and almanac at one end of the alphabet to zenith at the other end of the alphabet. Arab and Islamic influence was clearly present at America's founding. In fact, before America's founding. In 1492, a fellow by the name of Christopher Columbus drew upon the best cartographers in the world at the time, particularly Al-Farghani, to guide him in his travels all over the world. Then we fast forward to the year 1670 in Boston, when Captain John Smith, yes, the same one we know from Jamestown fame, helped to bring coffee to America, specifically to Boston. That was originally from Mocha, Yemen, Mr. Ambassador. And he learned about coffee during his time with the Ottomans. Very soon, coffee quickly became the breakfast drink of choice, which had previously been beer. So I think you get a sense of why the Boston Tea Party happened, because you're having beer for breakfast. What do you do after that? Fast forward again, now to the year 1904, when St. Louis hosted the World's Fair. Many inventions were showcased in St. Louis that year as part of the World's Fair, but one we know of in particular changed the course of history. That's right, I'm talking about the invention of the ice cream cone. This invention has been attributed to 2 Syrian immigrants, Ernest Hamwi and Abe Dumar. You know, our people like to wrap things, right, in bread. Shawarma, falafel, ta'amiyya, right? It's one of our things. So these 2 guys were making zalabia at the World's Fair. In the booth next door, they were serving ice cream on a plate. And the guy ran out of plates. He said, "What am I going to do?" So they rushed over with their zalabia. They turned them into a conical cone, and the next thing you know, the ice cream cone has been invented. It has become an American tradition, a global tradition, ever since, and it was the sensation of the 1904 World's Fair. I love this story because it captures the spirit of the American immigrant experience, borrowing from the traditions of the old world to create something customized for the new world. We say necessity is the mother of invention. Well, this is a story about innovation, timing, lady luck, and of course, good taste. Over the years, I've been privileged to visit all 50 states, usually by car. I think when you travel the country by car, especially the so-called blue highways, which are the little highways on an atlas, you really come to appreciate what America and Americans have to offer. I'm proud that I come from the flyover states, particularly Iowa and Nebraska. We call them flyover states because people fly from the East Coast to the West Coast and the West Coast to the East Coast, completely over that part of the country. But we don't mind. That's because we're preserving the best quality of life, the best secrets, right there in the heartland. Our 6 VIP tables tonight revolve around places that are well known in the Middle East and North Africa. On the surface, it looks like we named them after those places: Cairo, Palestine, Tripoli, Tunis, Casablanca, and Memphis. But in fact, we named them for towns and cities here in the United States that are mostly in flyover states. They don't call it Cairo, they call it Cairo, Illinois. They don't call it Palestine, they call it Palestine, Ohio. They don't call it Tripoli, Iowa, they call it Tripola, Iowa. They do call it Tunis, Texas, by the way, Madam Ambassador. Casablanca, New Mexico, and of course Memphis, Tennessee. Many of these took their names because of the topographical features where you find them. Like Arabia, Nebraska, for example, which is close to my family farm in Albion, Nebraska. We call that the gateway to the sandhills of Nebraska. And I know you're thinking that must be pretty modest, but in fact it's 20,000 square miles of sand and sandy soil. And some of these dunes are 300 feet high, 100 meters high. So this is how, for example, Arabia, Nebraska was born. It was just a little whistle stop for the trains, and it developed into something bigger. Other communities were established by homesick Americans of Arab descent. Creating these names created a kind of a connection to the old country, the old world, because they probably would never get back to the old country again. And this was a way to remind them of the bridge that they had created between the old country and the new world, the United States, where they'd come for a better life. There are many such examples, but the leader is Lebanon, Acting Ambassador Waed. There are 47 towns and cities in America named Lebanon. Are there any Lebanese in the room tonight? We knew there were. There had to be. And this actually, I think, speaks to the ability of Americans of Lebanese descent to assimilate to American society. Most of them got their start probably by opening small general stores. I know members of my family did. Well, there may be 47 Lebanons in America, but there's only one Al-Qaeda, Iowa. Our colleagues from the Embassy of Algeria, they know Al-Qaeda, named after Emir Abdelkader Jazairi, freedom fighter, founding father, father of modern-day Algeria. And there it is in Iowa, and they celebrate the relationship every year. You might not recognize that some American cities have a link to the Arab world at all. But Ambassador Dina Kawar, you and I know that the ancient Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, is located where present-day Amman, Jordan is located, for example. You might also be unaware that there's a direct relationship between ancient Carthage and Washington, D.C. In fact, it's called the Carthage stone, beautifully carved, placed at the upper reaches of the Washington Monument as a symbol of the relationship between our countries. It's actually amazing how evocative names of places can be that can connect us here in the United States with places that are tens of thousands of miles away. For example, I traveled a lot in California over the years. I had no idea that California was connected to the Arab world, but it is. In the year 1510, during the Spanish Inquisition, a Spanish novelist wrote a story about a mythical queen named Califia, who ruled over a legendary land called California. This land was famous for its gold and its wealth, and the locals pledged their fealty to their queen. whose name came from the Arabic word Khalifa. This mythical California evoked a spirit of opulence. So when the Spanish began exploring what is today the west coast of the United States, they called this new world California. And the rest is history. Speaking of California, some of you may have seen a movie called Baghdad Cafe. Right? This was a German movie that achieved cult status in Europe. I decided I wanted to go find the Baghdad Cafe, which is right out there on Route 66. So Baghdad, California, is a little south of Death Valley, a little north of Joshua Tree, and a little west of the Mojave Desert. So you won't be surprised when I tell you that the record in the United States for lack of rainfall is held by this little community. They went 767 days without a drop of rain from 1912 to 1914. With a welcome mat like that, Baghdad, California, eventually turned to dust. But I'm happy to say that you can still go to the Baghdad Cafe. It's just down the road in Newberry Springs, and it's open every day of the week, and I highly recommend the buffalo burgers. To the south of Baghdad, near the Sultan Sea, I came across one of the largest sand dune systems in the United States, stretching 40 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. This system, called the Algodones Dunes, is biologically unique on a global scale. This site has been used for many movies, including The Road to Morocco, as well as Return of the Jedi. So what do you think is the etymological history of algodones, which means cotton in Spanish? Well, algodones is derived from an Arabic word, al-qatan. And al-qatan in English means cotton. That's right. This desert terrain in the great American Southwest is better suited for camels than for horses. And this helps to explain why the United States Camel Corps was formed in the year 1856 at the initiative of the Secretary of War, a guy by the name of Jefferson Davis. And that name should ring a bell. Yes, the same Jeff Davis. The goal was to use camels to transport people and supplies across the desert. And to carry out this initiative, he brought in a camel driver from Syria by the name of Hai Jolly. The initiative went for some years, but when the Civil War broke out, like a lot of things, it ground to a halt. Hai Jolly continued to stay in the southwest of the United States, where he built relationships. He served as a jack of all trades, and he clearly earned the respect of the people down there because they created a monument in his name. So when I was down there, I pulled off the road to check out the Hai Jolly Monument. It's in the National Register of Historic Places, by the way. And as I was pulling away, I finally figured it out. His name wasn't really Hai Jolly, it was Hajj Ali, a name he got after he made the pilgrimage to Holy Mecca, right? But we Americanized it and he became Hai Jolly. Camels aren't the only things that thrive in the American desert. Turns out that California and Arizona are uniquely qualified to raise dates, and particularly Majul and Diglet Nur. They used to call it the Sahara of the Southwest in the old days. Just down the road from the Algodones Dunes, I started seeing signs for milkshakes, date shakes. And I said to myself, this must be a mirage. I think I've been out in the sun for too long. But I pulled in about 10 minutes later to the Westmoreland Date Shake in the town of Westmoreland, California. Westmoreland's not doing great. Their population has dipped below 2,000 people, but Westmoreland Date Shakes is doing a great job drawing people from all over the region. The proprietor is a fellow by the name of Ahmed Fejle, originally from Syria. And he opened the date shades, which also, it won't surprise you to know, is a grocery store, right? Serving delicacies from all over the Middle East. It turns out that Ahmed came from Syria in 1977 as a student, and then he stayed. And if you fast forward to the year 2000, he transitioned from being a guy who just collected dates to a guy who planted dates. And 3 years later, his Aya farm was certified as organic, and he's done great business ever since. He recently told the media, "I planted the trees and I grew the trees, and now the trees have given us a little fruit and a lot of work." I love this story because it's a true Arab-American entrepreneurial success story. Entrepreneurs tend to come to the United States with very little in their pockets. They work hard, they keep their heads down, they assimilate quickly, and in his case, as many, they establish a great family business that becomes multi-generational. Food is at the heart of the U.S. Arab experience. Some people have written entire books about that relationship. I won't go into it tonight, other than to say that certain foods like hummus and baba ghanoush and others have become almost as popular as hot dogs and pizza here in the United States. A handful of the factoids that I referenced tonight come from a book by Jonathan Curiel called Al-America, Travels Throughout America's Arab and Islamic Roots. It's an easy read and it's exhaustively researched. For example, I would not have known that the home of P.T. Barnum, the greatest showman on earth, featured multiple minarets and was inspired by the Mughal Taj Mahal. This extraordinary home contains Byzantine, Moorish, and Turkish architecture. I would also not have known that the Alamo, a small building that looms large in American history, is styled after Spanish and Moorish architecture of Muslim Andalusia. The Alamo's sister mission in the area, according to the National Park Service, reflect the architectural traditions of Spain, combining the styles of the Renaissance with Moorish design and craftsmanship. And it was Curiel who informed me that the favorite book of Elvis was The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. When Elvis needed some quiet time, he needed some solace, he went to the Prophet. In fact, he was so fond of this book, it is said, that he memorized the entire book and he could cite chapter and verse in any part of this book. So think about that. P.T. Barnum, the Alamo, and Elvis, quintessentially American icons that were heavily influenced, each in its own way, by Arab and Islamic culture. Almost everyone in the United States is an immigrant. In 1912, 154 Arabs went down on the Titanic. They were not in the first-class cabins, they were in steerage because they were people who were on their way to start their new life in the United States. My Lebanese grandfather came to the United States the same way, right about the same time. Thankfully, he was on a different ship. But these stories, like millions of others, brought people to Ellis Island where they started a new life, tying the old country to the new world. These were some of America's earliest goodwill ambassadors, citizen diplomats, who found ways to connect the old world with the new. Immigration has played and continues to play an outsized role in the success of the United States, bringing technology, expertise, innovation, and labor to help fuel our economy. And these ethnic communities have become an integral part of America's social fabric, helping us to become the greatest country on earth. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I enjoyed our virtual tour across the United States and halfway around the world. Our gastronomic journey began with the humble ice cream cone, and that's where it ends. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your dessert. Thank you.